KISS in black and white. Very similar to lino printing. So you have a piece of wood which you carve into, and everything that's white is what's been chipped out of the wood, so that when you roll the ink over and print it onto paper, it remains white. I started making wood blocks in my first year at university. I did a combined degree, so I did creative writing with fine art printmaking, which meant that a lot of my work, it's sort of illustrative. You know, there's no, in terms of these wood blocks, they're quite sort of, they are what you see in a way. They're illustrative. They're not high concept, or they're not anything too much. They're sort of illustrations, and a lot of that was sort of influenced from the books I was reading at the time, and the stories and the poems and the plays that I was writing. What I started to notice as I went on to making these prints was that I was having these patterns emerging. So in the background you can see here sort of oak leaves, and in the previous one lots of zigzags. And the idea of a print, I suppose it came from this idea that you can produce multiple copies of one image, and it can be widely distributed, and everybody can see it and own a copy. And it was traditionally it's a way of getting an image of anything out there, unlike a painting or a sculpture that tends to be one-off and unique. So when you're printing, you sort of start noticing that you're creating lots of the same image. So by default, you begin to look at sort of pattern making. So in this talk, I'm just going to go over very quickly. I'm going to talk about my practice as a printmaker, and also as somebody who makes wallpaper through repeat pattern, and also my collaborative work that I did with somebody at university in film and in video and in performance and sort of immersive theatre. And with that sort of like idea of all of those elements, I'll then talk about the project that I'm working on here at Zaratan for my residency. So the overview should give you a clearer idea of what I'm trying to do upstairs. So yeah, so as I was saying, my prints then led on to sort of making wallpapers. I started isolating elements of the patterns and transmuting them, I suppose, into these very specific designs. The thing that I was looking at as well was, although I love traditional wallpaper, William Morris, Cole & Son, these very traditional things, I've always found them to be just very pretty or very nice. And I've always found most wallpaper to act as a sort of background feature to a room. And in designing these, I wanted them to be sort of at the forefront. I wanted them to take over the room. I wanted them to invade the space. But I also wanted them to be sort of bold and funny and a bit rude and a bit out there. So that's where my sort of wallpaper started coming from. This is ironic. I'm not into killing things. Rich English aristocrats are, though, and it's proved very popular with them. So this idea of sort of repeating the same image, and all of these are sort of hand printed as well, so they sort of take on the idea. And this is just an example of it being installed. Strangely, all of my wallpaper seems to end up in bathrooms and toilets, and I don't really know why. But as you'll see soon, there is a recurring theme of toilets in my work, in my wallpaper work especially. And in a way I like that. I like the idea, because people inevitably have to go to the toilet, and they're alone, and they've got a allotted period of time in there, and they're doing whatever that you tend to do. And they sort of have to engage with what's around them. So it's sort of like the idea of a toilet as a gallery space I like anyway, and I'll talk more about that in a second. So that's my print work, and now I'm just going to talk about my collaborative work. So while at university, I was working with a friend who turned up one day, and she said to me, "Can you?" She's another artist called Holly McLean, and she said, "I want to build a canteen. Do you want to build it with me?" And for want of nothing better to do, I thought, yeah, why not? And it was partly, we were at university. It was our first year. The canteen at the university was, just a bit of context, was overpriced, and we were angry, and we were communists, and we were socialists, and it was all about giving back and workers. And so the idea was to make this canteen called the Knick-Knack Shack, which is Knick-Knack as canteen backwards, and it was almost like a sort of free. Everyone could come and eat for free, but you had to work, so you had to work in the shack and provide the food as well as doing it. So we built this thing, not knowing how to build anything. and I pasted it with my prints, and it became a platform over time. And this was sort of the beginnings of sort of more performance-based work, of installation-based work, of video work, of immersive theatre stuff, and it all started from here. So so we only actually fed people once because we realised it was actually quite expensive to feed people, and it was more conceptual than that. So we moved on fairly quickly. And the second project we did was called the Maryniak Polska. As you might know from my name, Maryniak, it's a Polish name. So I've grown up in having two sides to my life in so much as my father's side's predominantly, well, is completely Polish. So we would, I'd often be at funerals or weddings or events or gatherings for family. So it was a complete cultural shift from what I was used to in my normal life in terms of food, language, habits, all sorts of things, religion. So the idea was to then turn the shack into a school. So it was going to be a school where I could share, with the help of Holly, Polish cuisine with a Polish language lesson. So it was a very sort of idea that it was a platform for learning suddenly, and we just kept building on top of this thing. And the idea was that you grabbed a token and you sort of shoved it through a slot, and then your meal would appear from this sort of hatch down here, and then your cutlery would drop down, and then once you'd eaten, you would then be invited to go into the shack itself and put on one of these floral tabards, which is a very Polish thing. And maybe this is cultural appropriation, and maybe, you can judge me if you want, but it was more about being fun. So you can see them there, they're sort of moving the things up and down. So, suddenly we were making sort of performance work where the participants were the performers and part of the thing, and there's somebody getting their food. So the shack went on to be all sorts of different things. It went on to be a sort of social space. It was a stage, as I said. It was a school. It was a storage unit. It became a hospice for unwanted artworks, mainly our own. And it ended its life as a bar, like most things. So that's the hospice. And this is it sort of after 2 years, with lots of things being added, and we ripped it apart and we put things, and the quality of the images are great, but you sort of get an idea. And it was great just to sort of have this sort of object that we could just stick all of our stuff to and not be precious about it. And again, the notion of printing and building up these layers and not being precious about them, because you could make so many. So we moved swiftly on and back to toilets. And in my third year, because I was doing creative writing and fine art, as I mentioned, we were given the option of doing either a dissertation or we could do a project. And my project was to put on an exhibition. I suppose my first solo exhibition. But rather than go through the lines of finding a gallery or someone who wanted to put it on, I thought, well, maybe I'll just reappropriate the public toilets in the city of Bath, where I was studying, which were it was an amazing location. It was central. And so the idea was to put on this sort of pop-up exhibition that would almost be like a sort of performance, and it would be less about the printing and more about or the work rather, and more about what would happen in that space. So I sort of ran down there at 5 o'clock before the show opened at 6, set up a table, put all the prints up on all the walls in both female and male toilets, and bought all this really, really cheap, disgusting champagne, which you can see there, and relabeled it all, and had a violinist come and play, which was really fun. So it was an interesting sort of setup, and it was also interesting to see what would happen. Would the police come? Would they shut it down? Would the council come and shut it down? What would happen? And as you can see there, this is sort of, I think this is in the female toilets. The male toilets really stunk so badly that nobody went in there at all, or they did, but very briefly. And then everyone was in the female toilet. So again, it was sort of breaking down these sort of traditional barriers of male-female, one of these last isolated areas where they sort of segregated, I suppose. So again, it was about performance, but it was also about the print, so it was all sort of tying in together. And that's it at the end. So it was good, and it was interesting. It was interesting to see what would happen, but nothing did happen. No one really batted an eyelid. The only annoyed people were the people who hung out there normally. sort of drug addicts and a few homeless people who were really pissed off with me that I was there and sort of invading their space, which is understandable. And apart from that, the toilets were just shut down for a week afterwards. I don't know why it took so long to clean them and take the prints down, but that was the way it was. So that sort of brings me, that gives you a sort of overview of all of the different elements to my work and my collaborative stuff and what I do, and brings me to what I've been doing here during my residency at Zaratan. So as I said before, this influence of theatre has been a big part of my practice, and so I found myself in the last month and a half suddenly constructing a theatre. For different reasons, for all the reasons that's sort of part of my practice, but also I've been reading about a play, a ballet rather, that Cocteau, Jean Cocteau, who was a French author, poet, playwright, filmmaker. He was a multifaceted artist. He came up with this ballet called Parade, which was premiered in 1915, so 100 years ago, and 3 years. And he had Picasso design the costumes, and he had Eric Satie do the music. And so it was at a time of Dada, and it was sort of this mad time, and it bombed basically. People were basically rioting in the theatre. Mainly because it was so avant-garde. You know, Picasso designed these very cubist costumes, which I'll show you in a second, and people just didn't understand it and they didn't get it. And I just like this idea of creating a full piece of theatre with artists, which has now become a tradition as well. David Hockney has done a lot of theatre design as well. So I've called the theatre Dieu et mon riot, which the original is Dieu et mon droit, or excuse my pronunciation, but it's French, and it's the motto of the Queen, and it means God and my right. So the Queen of England, that's her motto, and it's on every English passport. And it's really arrogant. I mean, it's basically saying I'm not answering anyone but God. It means God and my right, and I just sort of reappropriated that into God and my riot, which is a riot, if you don't know, is like civil unrest and people coming together. So it's sort of harking back to this idea of being a socialist and, you know, taking it and reappropriating, you know, seizing assets and taking over the public toilets and doing all that sort of thing. So we've got a couple of cherubs at the top just holding a grenade on the edge there. So I'm coming up with this sort of play, and I suppose it all feeds back into my creative writing as well. And it's not as if the play exists, or then it does exist, but there's enough elements to it that might suggest that there's something happening. So the idea is I'm going to build a maquette, which I'm currently building a maquette, with the stage front there, and there'll be lots of backdrops, which will give indications as to sort of what's happening with the narrative, like what's going on. You know, there might be some clouds, or there might be an interior of a bar, or there might be something else. And I suppose the idea is having these characters engage with this space that is fictitious but real. It's sort of the lines are blurred. So these are the three characters in Parade that Picasso designed, just to give you an idea. And I've also got three characters in my piece, which I suppose in a way are elements of myself, of my own psyche, that we all have these constant sort of push and pull elements to our own being. I suppose in a way it's a self-reflection and it's a self-portrait. And so on the left there we have somebody carrying a hod, which is traditionally used to carry bricks, but it's full of books. In the middle we have a wanderer, someone who's sort of travelling and carrying sort of these objects, these symbolic objects of a globe and a telescope. And on the right we have a rake, which sort of harks back to a very famous illustrator, painter called William Hogarth in the 1700s, who did a very famous series of paintings about a rake. And a rake is someone who's a bit of a philanderer and a bit of an alcoholic and a bit of an indulger. And so they're all sort of elements of me, that one especially, I suppose. And so, yeah, so this is what the play is about. But, you know, the narrative is visual, it's not written, it's sort of on the page in its own. And so alongside this maquette, the idea well, I'm currently producing this woodcut, which is probably the biggest woodcut I've ever produced. It's 7 feet, and it will be by 10 feet. You can't really get an idea of the scale here, but it's sort of almost floor to ceiling. And it's made up of several blocks, and I'll be sort of layering it and building up on it, and it will be all 3 of those characters amalgamated. And I think what I'm trying to do here is sort of remove myself from the idea of the print being just a repeated image, and making it one unique piece that's absolutely vast. And I think once the show comes down, which opens on the 24th of this month, just so you know, I think I'll reappropriate this piece and take it and put it somewhere in Lisbon. Where, I don't know yet, but I'll sort of give it back to the city, as it were. Almost like I did with the public toilets. I went and put all my stuff in there, and it you know, to see what would happen. And I like the idea that it might be graffitied over, it might be, you know, the elements, the sunshine, the rain might take it away, and it will degrade over time, or it might be removed by the council. So it's all sort of coming back round. And so yeah, and that's where I am with it. And so please, if you can come on the 24th, roughly 2 weeks, I think, it will be there in all its glory. And there endeth the talk. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Shy people.
No? Okay, great. Next. Thank you.
Okay. Hi everybody. We are Mara and Paula. We are 2 young artists from Spain. I'm from Santiago de Compostela, and she's from Barcelona. So we wanna start to explain a little bit the process of our work. We are working a documentary in this art residence, so we wanna talk about the process. And first of all, I'm gonna do a little introduction about our previous work. So this is 2 work of us, it's separated. This is the Paula work. She usually works like with the conceptualization of the space, developing minimal actions in the form of installations based on the process of the architectural conductors. So this is her last exhibition in her room. It's only for see like the way we have to materialize of ideas or of previously work. And this is me. Yeah, I'm usually work as an audiovisual artist, combining the perception of the image and the representations with the dialectic of the word. Sometimes I make publications with that, and in another I only make videos by the internet or something like this. So at this point, we start. This is our first work together, so this is only this little introduction for see how we wanna combine our two disciplines, because she usually work with the space and I usually work with the image, and to do this documentary.
Yes. So, I'm going to talk about what we're doing now. Now we're working in the project New Reference to Combat Precariousness, and it's a visual issue that relates our current economic instability with the one of the retired people of our neighborhood in Graça. We want to reflect the daily routines of both groups in that documentary, because our daily routines have a lot of connections with the daily routines of retired people, but from a very different point of view. The biggest difference that we have is that they have already built their past, and we are all day thinking how to build our future. So with this project, we want to generate an interrogative voice about how we should fit our aspirations with our economic instability. Okay.
So at this point, we realize that if we are talking about precariousness, we need some precariousness materials. So we take this mini DV camera from my parents. So with the mini DV, you can use the same tapes again and again. You can rake it over. So the thing, we have 3 tapes to do this documentary, and like one tape is more or less 1 hour and a half for the tape. So the thing we do it is we work in one tape, we digitalize and work it over. And it's important to us because you are not making new things, that's only reusing the things you have. So it's important the concept for us. That's a picture about the process. And also with me, Bruno. This is the first delivery of the tapes. That it's a guy which his hobby is digitalized tapes. So we only pay 4 euros for digitalized tape. And we meet him by the market of Facebook, and it's really nice.
Yes. So we did that map of the neighborhood. Mm, it's not exactly Grasa, the neighborhood, because we were based in the routines of the retired people and not in the borders of the neighborhood. So we live here, and all that parking points are the most important public meeting points where they used to meet there. Um, so I started to talk about the public spaces that they use, because we realized that in Graça there are a lot of public stuff like tables and places to sit, and they use a lot of all that stuff to play cards or to see what's happening around them, and and yeah. And for example, sometimes we try to play with them and learn some new cards game. So because we have a different perception of the public space, because retired people use all this stuff and as a stop place, and we hardly never use it. So we use the public places like a crossing point, and not to stop there and be there. Um, Okay, that's another meeting point, and we put only one in that map, because the most important is the most popular place to go to play cards and domino, and I think we call it La Meca, because it's really important for them. And there's usually a lot of people there, and as you can see, they are mostly men in the public places.
So I'm gonna talk earlier for the private meeting point space. So we choose these 2 spaces. And one is here is the sport club, and this another one is the junta. So we start to understand these spaces because they talk to us. Oh, if you want to play cards with women, and you can go to the junta because there are cheap coffee here, so you can take it. and we start to commit to these 2 spaces. This is the price of the of the junta. So it's interesting for us because we are talking about the economical instability, and this is a point that they use it to make, but they're taking something that is really cheap and we are what are useful. And this is the sport group. So there are only men here. We are the first young women that still pay membership and come every day to take coffee. This is because we have to. So it's important to be membership to this club. So this is our presentation, but we have to wait in 1 month to know if we are open. And also, it's interesting how they use these spaces because it's related by they themselves. So they use it more for meeting and then do it another more than the daily routines. They do it like another things like dancing and eat before. So it's important to us. And then we realize that they make another uses of everything of the neighborhood. So if they have it to go to another point, they take it the bus for to it. That's something important to us because we always going walking. It's from here to there, it's only 10 minutes walking. So they take in the bus, they wait in 50 minutes to take the bus and only for doing 3 stops and go to the center of the neighborhood. So that's something so important because they understand the time like but so different to us. And that's the last one. This is a kind of garden plantation that is there. And yeah, we make like a relationship with the sport club because in the sport club there are one man that made some rules to organize the space, but they do it for free. He worked for free only for president, and because he do it because he want to help to another people. And in this point, in the garden, there are one woman that do it like something the same that she only with this plantation and how to grow the vegetables, just for share it with her family, or if you want to go there and take a little conversation with she gave it to you, because it's another conception of the work that we don't have it already. And right now we're gonna show some teaser about the documentary to see all these things we are talking about. So, 1 minute.
No. Estás aquí porque te gusta.
Como se dice, reformado en España.
¿Reformado?
Sí, yo no trabajo, va.
Ah, no.
Retirado.
Jubilado.
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 Jubilado. Estoy jubilado y soy el tesorero del club.
Ah, de toda la vida.
Y entonces, como no tengo nada que hacer,
Vienes aquí.
viene para aquí.
A mí lo que más interesante me parece es eso, que se distribuyan. También es como un poco el nivel económico, o sea, todo es precario, pero
Es como que los de aquí son VIP.
aquí son VIP, sí, porque están en una asociación y tienen otro estatus, ¿sabes? Los otros son como más precarios, de que puede ir cualquiera, siempre y cuando seas mayor de 80 años. 65. Es que es increíble que no nos hayan dejado beber té por ser jóvenes.
Muy fuerte. Para mayores.
Ciao.
That's all. Any questions? Suggestions?
I do. So I was going to ask you, because obviously you're both two young women that also aren't Portuguese, did it take you long to kind of build a relationship with these people? So they trusted you and they let you film in their spaces and go into the clubs and stuff. Did that take a long time? Did you have to build up the relationship slowly, or were they just fine with you filming?
No, I think that we think that maybe because they are older than us, but they don't care that we film them or take photos of them, and so we go there and they are very happy that we stay there, and they join with us to different things, so they don't care about that. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's important to us to be quite with this because we are talking about their intimate. So we have to be quiet and realize that if we are filming there, we need a kind of relationship, like to go there every day. Like they go, it's more for doing the same routine and see how they do it, and then come recording and take these things to come compose in a documentary.
When do you find out if your membership is accepted?
Important question. Yeah, already we think because they have to be reunited and because we have to be approved for everyone. So they have to know us, and right now we think that it's maybe 2 weeks more, but we come there every weekend or all weeks and say, oh, okay, the next week you can be here, but we are waiting. But the best thing is because our photographs is there in the wall, so we're going every day and see our faces. It's really nice. And that's my wallpaper.
More questions. And just as an information, the documentary should be ready on the 31.
On the 31, yeah. So
No, on the 30th of May, sorry.
yeah.
May doesn't have 31. So if you want to come to see the final result, feel free. And thank you guys.
Thank you.
If they want, maybe later.
I'm sure they will. If they're VIPs.
I was going to give them forever the trophy the first time.
I like the idea.
Cool. I quite enjoyed both. Quite different, but you managed to both express what you were working on.
Good.
So people got a good idea.
And they might want to come.
Yeah.
Of course, yeah, they do.
That's an extra.
Yeah, this is a fun project.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. See, they'll love it. You should definitely show it to them because they'll be our cheese already and that's so
I think we should organise a bus and bring them all here.
Yeah, we thought that before, but I think it's been going to because it's far from the next. We got them back. Get them a bus here, bus back. Went to home, went to home. Yeah.
Or rent a minibus.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'll drive. But maybe we're going to fight with them and they late in the forest. Yeah, you should. It's a nice day on the forest. That'd be nice.